Now, if you want a large luxury SUV for the family, the Europeans have you well and truly covered with their sleek and refined offerings. But what if you wanted something a touch more tough and outdoorsy? This is where the Jeep Grand Cherokee comes in. It's back in its 5th generation, guys, after a fairly long wait. So today we'll tell you should you pick one over its established rival. Set your sights on the Jeep Grand Cherokee, and the sheer mass of SUV in front of you is endearing in itself, although it's about as large as its competitors. So much of this sense comes from the blocky but still contemporary styling. Striking touches are the deep 7-slat grille over which the bulged bonnet folds in and the wide, slim LED headlamps. Contrasting with this is the big bumper that juts out with its simple but large openings. The chrome treatment too is subtle but effective. Jeep says thought has been put in to maintain good approach and departure angles with the short overhangs. This fairly functional aesthetic continues to the sides. The body panels are simple but tempered by a strong shoulder line. That continues with the large but low glasshouse with some flair coming from the chrome-lined D-pillar motif. The large 20-inch wheels with their simple but clean design add to this in their typical Jeep square wheel arches. The rear is much like the front, attractive but not overly flashy with its condensed tail lamps and the contoured boot lid. The Grand Cherokee then does well to carry a sense of gravitas without being too dependent on flashy design flourishes. Now once you've stepped inside the Grand Cherokee, you realize that it is quite a plush and stylish place to spend time in, and that starts with just how the cabin has been designed. And that quite plush feeling continues with the materials and textures that Jeep has used inside the Grand Cherokee. So for example, this panel here is completely soft touch with this nice stitching. The wood veneer feels really quite nice, actually like wood veneer. And even here, the door panels, this plastic is soft, same with the wood. And all the panels here, they're soft to touch, which means that you really find a sense of plushness inside the cabin. But you know that great sense of occasion that some of the Jeep's rivals bring to the table? Some of that is lost when you look at, say, the lower reaches of the cabin, where you realize that the plastics maybe could have been of a better grade, a slightly better grade, and similarly the panels maybe could have been a touch tighter. But of course, this is relative to this being a car that costs nearly rupees 1 crore. So the way in which the dark soft leather on top merges with the gloss black middle layer and the grey wood veneer is crisply done. This works with a contemporary design with the slim vents, the well-integrated screens and the strong accent running across. Now if you like your tech, then the Jeep Grand Cherokee has you well and truly covered. You get 5 screens in this cabin. To start with, you have this 10.25-inch instrument cluster, which is really quite useful. It's functional, gives you a lot of information clearly. Then you have this 10.1-inch touch screen, which is again quite easy to use. There are hard button redundancies for everything. So it's very easy to use, very functional. You have this screen for the passenger where they can play music. There's an HDMI port for them to play videos. They can even send navigation data from there to the main screen. So it's very useful. You have a head-up display which gives you just enough information that you need, like the speed and the ADAS functions. And then you have this, a very useful feature for our conditions, a mirror for the rear camera. This screen is quite well integrated. Its low brightness and a polarized glass cover keep it out of sight of the driver. Now, aside from being stylish, the Jeep Grand Cherokee is also quite a functional place to spend time in. So for example, the seats themselves are wide, supportive, they're cooled, so that's an added benefit, as well as heated. Not very useful for India, but it's still there. And then you have a nice view out. The frontal view is great, you can see the edges of the bonnet. Maybe this A-pillar could have been a bit slimmer, but that's a minor nitpick. And then when you come back here, the sideward visibility is again great with this fairly low sill and the large rear view mirror. And then again, when you come here, you notice that functionality also continues in the center console. The bank of buttons in the center console look a touch intimidating, but provide tactile controls for all the functions you might need on the move, like the climate controls, audio, heated steering wheel, as well as the heated and cooled seats. This goes down to a button to shut off the lane departure system as well as the passenger screen. You even get both USB-C and A ports, a large wireless charger and some deep center cubbies. If anything, we found the rotary gear selector to be a bit fiddly to use. It has a tendency to slip into park instead of reverse during, say, a 3-point turn, possibly due to the clicks not being quite as defined as ideal. Now, if you are looking at the Jeep Grand Cherokee, then invariably the second row will be quite important to you. And in that case, it's largely good news as well. So for example, the seat back, it's nice, well cushioned with the nice firm cushioning. So that's not a problem. And then you can also recline it to quite a comfortable angle. So again, you can get into a nice seating position easily. Although the seat squab, the lower squab maybe could have been longer, there's not much underthigh support. And that's also due to the floor being slightly high, which also makes getting in and out slightly difficult, not very difficult, but slightly. So yeah, you could have done with a bit more underthigh support here. And then you come to the amenities. Of course, you have this sunshade, very useful in our weather, really large panoramic sunroof. And then you get here. Now there isn't a third climate zone, which is a bit of a miss, but what you do get instead is a nice power outlet. Now it's the US style one, so you'll need an adapter, but it's still there, which is a great addition. Again, like in the front, you have 4 USB ports, type A and type C, and then you also get heated seats at the back as well. The boot is quite functional too. The load lip is high but flat, and the space is wide and deep, even with a space saver spare wheel tucked underneath. The Jeep Grand Cherokee gets level 2 ADAS. The adaptive cruise control is quite easy to engage and controls speeds well enough, but we found the lane keeping function to be quite erratic. It doesn't seem to follow curves on our highways, and there wasn't any visual intimation at these times too. Although the forward collision system isn't too heavy-handed with its interventions. For passive safety, you get a crisp set of 360-degree cameras with washers, 8 airbags, brake assist, TPMS and rear seatbelt warnings. India is the first to get the right-hand drive Jeep Grand Cherokee. Unlike the big V6 and V8 mills in the US spec cars, this version gets the same 2-liter turbo petrol as the Wrangler, putting out 272 PS and 400 Nm. Now the outputs may seem healthy, but this small displacement motor needs some pushing and prodding before it's fully up and running. So at say below 2000 RPM, the Jeep Grand Cherokee can sometimes feel a bit hesitant and jerky, which also means that at slow moving traffic or on inclines, you might find that progress isn't quite as seamless as it should be. But things improve quite a bit, say when the road opens up or you're out on the highway like we are right now. Then the motor can fully breathe, so to speak. The ZF 8-speed will always make sure that you have a consistent supply of performance on tap. Of course, it isn't as effortless as some of the Jeep's 6-cylinder rivals, but you still have quite a reasonable amount of performance always on tap. Another great trait is the refinement inside. The active noise cancelling does seem to work. The Grand Cherokee keeps wind and road noise out as well as anything at this price. Now you have a sport mode that sharpens up responses from the gearbox, quickens responses from the steering and the pedals. And that's when you realize that the Jeep Grand Cherokee is a fairly competent handler. Of course, there's some roll and some pitch and dive considering how heavy and tall this car is. But once past that, you realize that the Jeep over, say, a sweeping section of highway corners or even slightly tighter corners, it feels composed, it feels predictable for, of course, as large an SUV that it is. And that is helped by the steering feel. It's well weighted, it's reasonably precise, although maybe at city speeds it could slack off a bit more. But probably the most reassuring trait of the Jeep Grand Cherokee is its ride quality. Now, as with any Jeep, there's always a sense of toughness coming through when you're in this SUV. So of course at low speeds, maybe some of the sharper bumps, it feels a bit firm, but again it's very well damped. And then when you pick up speed, there's a sense of pliancy, there's a sense of stability that really is quite endearing. It really ties in with that sense of solidity that you think of when you think of a Jeep SUV. Now we couldn't do any serious off-roading with the Grand Cherokee, but we don't think too many owners in India will be quite too keen on this either. But you get the base Quadra-Track 1 4x4 system. We think Jeep could have packed in the more advanced Quadra-Track 2 system with its low range mode, if not for anything but dinner table bragging rights. Otherwise you get the off-road modes, hill descent and off-road view cameras. Priced at Rs 77.50 lakh, the Jeep Grand Cherokee undercuts its rivals but only by a slim margin. This SUV will always have to contend with not having a 3-pointed star or a blue and white propeller on it, but make no mistake, the Jeep Grand Cherokee is an option you cannot ignore in this segment. We would have liked a bigger diesel engine ideally and maybe some better seat comfort. But aside from this, the Grand Cherokee has it down with its massive feature set, great styling inside and out, competent driving dynamics and impressive rough road ability.